Hey, awesome. Great to have you here. Thank you guys for coming and being here. And thank you for flying. It's great to have, I think you'd appreciate, an international presence here at Acts Conference. And special mention, hold your applause, because special mention, where's Giselle? Giselle, so, Giselle traveled about 40 billion miles to get here, routed through JFK, New York, Kyrgyzstan, back through Ghana, and then eventually came to New Zealand. And but the fare was about $9, and so I guess he's here now. So well done, Giselle, for being here. Longest flight to get here. It's awesome. Very good. So what I'm going to get these guys to do, I'm going to take a seat because it looks like a bit awkward I'm standing, but I'm going to get these guys, we want to talk about this season. I think the last season that we've been in, again, it's been about 3 years since we've met, so I think it's really important to kind of talk about the season that we've been in, but I don't want to also camp there. So we are going to journey through the valley of the shadow of the last 2 years, but we're not going to camp there. But it'd be cool to kind of have a quick 60-second from each of you, your name, your age, I'm kidding, but your name, where you're from, and maybe just talk about what's happened in the last couple of years in your nation and in your church. That'd be really cool. Ace, you can go first.
So hi, and my name is Ace Concordia. I am the pastor for the Equippers Manila South. Yeah. So in the last 2 years that we've had lockdown in Manila, it's been a real challenge, simply because lockdown with there's about more than 10 million people in our city in Manila itself, and a huge majority of those people are in poverty. So if you're middle class and upper class, it's good that you're at home and you have all the amenities that you need to make life a little bit more comfortable. But a huge, especially the poor people, they're the ones who got affected the most. Yeah, if you're living in a house that's really small with thin walls, and then it's summer and it's hot, so it's really difficult. Yeah, so it was a very hard time for us. But again, the church is a very resilient church, in Manila. So despite all of that happening, we found ways to be able to continue to move forward, and that's by going online, and a lot of our volunteers and workers continue to serve even in the midst of the pandemic.
Hi, my name is Francesco. I'm the pastor of Equippers Rome, Italy. Our church is a young church. We started 5 years ago, 5 years and a half. And at the moment, by the grace of God, we have 3 locations in Rome. And under the COVID, we were able, by the grace of God, also to plant something in Sicily, in the south. And as you probably heard of, during the pandemic, Italy was very much affected. It was one of the first countries that really got hit very strong. But we always believed, even in this time of uncertainty and difficulties, that the solution for the problems that people were going through was the gospel. And so we took this COVID as an opportunity to lift our voice. And I have to be honest, our influence in these past 2 years has grown like crazy. Yeah.
There was a section of New Zealand society that didn't want to eat pizza and pasta because of that, but we've now come back to eating pizza and pasta. We were worried about getting COVID, but thank you. Now, Ruth.
Hi, I'm Ruth Swift, and I'm from Australia. Through this last couple of years, both Wayne and myself, we pastor Resound Church in Melbourne, and Wayne also is the leader of our movement. So, we've seen a lot of different things happen with COVID over our nation. Our nation was affected very, very differently everywhere. Some places didn't feel the effect as great as some others did. Melbourne won the award of the most lockdown city in the world. Woohoo! And with that brought some great challenges, but with that also brought some amazing things that God was doing in our state and in our nation. And, you know, coming out of COVID, we're now seeing, I think, 8 churches planted around our nation with a whole lot more proposed to happen in the near future. And so, you know, God may have allowed what we saw happen, but it was an allowance for what he wants to do in the future. And so we're grateful for what God's done and what he's going to continue to do.
So my name is Tore Runkel from Germany, Mainz. And yeah, the pandemic hits us as well. We had a lot of regulation as you had. Maybe we would have the same regulation as in New Zealand if we were not so central in Europe, because that's the dream of every German, to be, you know, by himself, alone at home. It's true. So we
He's the only one that actually enjoyed the 2 years of lockdown.
It's not for the Christians, but it's, you know. But yeah, we had this regulation, for example, that you cannot meet with more than 10 or 5 people, I don't know, I don't remember. It was really less people. And so we thought you cannot even have 50 people in a room, in a big room. So we decided to have church streams at home, watching and having fellowship together at home together with a few people. But as this was not allowed anymore, we said, okay, why not doing it publicly all over the area we're living, which is the Rhine-Main area, which has 5 million people. And we started 7 different streams in Frankfurt and Darmstadt and all around our cities, bigger cities. And then we had 7 church streams while started in this pandemic. And we thought, okay, why not continue doing it after the pandemic? And now we have 3 different church streams doing it in Idstein, Frankfurt, and Darmstadt. And we had a service, I think, 4 weeks ago in Frankfurt with 75 people, which is really great, really, really great. And you know, in the beginning, end of February, we thought, okay, now the pandemic will end, and you know, the war break out in Ukraine, and now the new stuff coming, new challenges coming to Europe, and we are in the middle of that and trying to figure out what is the chance for us as a church, and working with that, and steering through that, and make it happen that people can listen and the gospel and have a fair chance to meet Jesus.
Yeah, my name's Mark, and I have the privilege of leading Equippers Church in Surrey, in the UK. And I was actually lucky enough to be out here for SHAT in July, which was pretty awesome. I think Shane Willard and I were the only 2 internationals at SHAT, but we made it. And I think similar to stuff to Germany, New Zealand, London, probably pretty similar. Lockdown for considerable amounts of time. And one of the good things that came out of lockdown for us is when it came to doing online church, we discovered that we had some abilities in the church that were pretty good at putting it together. TBN Europe, which is the largest Christian channel across Europe, somehow caught a hold of it, I'm not quite sure, and approached us and said, hey, would you take your online show and would you put it on TV every week? And so for a period of several months, actually, we were able to put a weekly Equippers Church kind of like, here's what we do. It wasn't just a whole preach, it was worship and some testimony and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, out of what was an incredibly challenging time, that's just maybe one little highlight of something that pretty good happened. We've also got a prime minister, or had a prime minister, who probably didn't really believe COVID existed for a long time. So we were probably lucky to come out sooner than a lot of places. So we've been free of restrictions since probably the start of the year, completely free of restrictions. And so in some ways, maybe one of the more blessed places, actually. Yeah.
Awesome. So now we can kind of, anybody can jump in. We can put this on shuffle a wee bit. But what about the... I keep thinking of this thought, and the reference doesn't always land, but you know, in the Madagascar, I love the Madagascar, the penguins of Madagascar, and I think that's so funny. And there's a point where they're going, "Hey, where are you going?" And the penguins are like, "We're going to Antarctica." And then they get to Antarctica, and then there's just this cold, southerly, everything's snow and ice. And then one of them just says, well, this sucks. And they realize that's not the place they want to go. And I guess probably a lot of lockdown was like that. We sat there at home, and even I was on my couch, and when our team online, who do such a great job, were like, jump to your feet. I'm like, no, you jump to your feet. And there was a point where I'm just like, oh, man, I just want to get out and about, and I want to. And there's a point where we can either sit there and wallow in it, or we can actually go, well, how do we figure this thing out? The church was never about us meeting together, and we really had to figure some things out. So I want you to talk about what were some of the initiatives. I love talking opportunity. This is a session to give context now, but now I want to talk about what were the opportunities, and some of you have talked about some of them, that you thought about with your team. How are we going to navigate this next season, realizing that the church, as Hannah said before, and as we've heard, the church has always been in transition. There's always been things like this, and nothing is new. But how do we figure that out with our teams? What was the thinking in your team? What were the opportunities that you took in that season that you're now really glad that you're coming through and you're stronger as a result of it? Anyone just jump in at any time.
I'll jump in. So for me, some of you know, I took over from Pastor Peter Prothero 3 years ago. And so I took over officially in November, and then we went into lockdown in March, so just had a few months. And, Peter, great friend of many people here, great leader. But definitely when it came to leading that church, God gives you a vision. I guess the vision wasn't different, but some of the culture that I saw, there were some things that probably wanted to change. So where COVID actually really became a very, very good friend to me was it gave me the opportunity to immediately lay down everything that we did in a positive way. Now, a lot of it we've re-picked back up again and we're running with. But actually, there are certain things that we haven't picked back up again. And actually, it was a good friend to me because there was a lot of conversations I didn't really have to have because COVID did it for me. If you're
you were saying things like, yeah, I'm real sorry about that ministry shut. Oh, me too, I'm on the same page.
Exactly, I'm in pain about it, but what can we do?
COVID.
So no, genuinely, taking over transition, actually it gave the opportunity for a complete blank canvas. And then coming out 2 years later, I've been able to cherry pick what I want to continue with, what do we want to start new. So yeah, in a real practical way, it saved me a lot of really hard conversations, so I'm really grateful.
For us, it was a little bit different. What I really enjoyed while the pandemic was how now culture works for us. I mean, you need to invest a lot of time, a lot of power to build culture, to have a strong culture in church. But then in the pandemic, everything is shaken. And everything which is not running with this culture is falling apart. But if you have a healthy culture, it stays, the people stays, the team is there already. And it was for me, now is the culture working for me, instead I have to work and invest into the culture. And that makes it happen that we can start different church streams and I just can relax and I didn't need to control everything because the culture is working. I knew all leaders would do the same what I would do, or what we would do as Equippers Church. And that helps me really much in this pandemic time.
Talk about just Tora while I got you there, because I know some people have been to Tora's church. It's in Mainz in Germany, and it truly is. It's the most amazing church culture. What you guys are doing, you and Gabby, is amazing, and the feel of the church, and it's very. You're really working against, if I can say, German culture, natural culture, right? Is a bit more. But these guys have come in, and everybody's excited. Everybody's happy to be there. They've got just an amazing church full of people doing amazing things. But how do you translate that? Because I know with some of I want to touch on some of the Ukraine stuff that you guys are doing as well. But how does that culture help you to continue to, there's lots of initiatives that you guys are involved in. So how does that culture help you to continue to push out, to continue to reach out in the midst of, a lot of obstacles as well?
Good question. For example, it's just the matter of fact that we have a vision. And this vision is not changing. And we're still the church. And it's all about, we're not extreme. We're not looking, we do not say we're not changing the theology and saying, oh, Jesus comes back in 3 weeks because of this pandemic. Or some other extremes we do. So we know we are still in a harvest. Good. We're looking for people. We try out to reach for people. And we're serving. That's really normal for the most of the people in our church. That's culture part. And so they do not stop serving because it's pandemic. They find ways how to handle it and come through it.
That's good.
Yeah. So that's an example how it works. And they're still trying to do it excellent. They don't just buy a camera in front of the stage and then they just hold on it and make a really cheap movie or video or something. No, they try. They buy a camera there, and they give a lot of money for it, tens of thousands euros, I tell you. But they want to do it excellent from the beginning on, because it's our culture doing things in a good way, right? So that is how culture helps us through it. And it's always the idea, it was never, this is a hard time, this is so bad, let's go back to the old style. It was always the thinking, this is an opportunity. What can we do with that? How can help us this situation to spread the gospel to the people? It's always this kind of stuff.
I want to, that's really important. Like, I don't want to camp there, but that, because I hope you were saying that too, because when a really solid culture is established in a local church, no matter what comes, people are like, they're up for it anyway. Oh, cool, here's the next challenge, no problem. And it's not that Banning said we don't see the mountain, but we see the mountain, but we still say, but we can still overcome that too because of who's with us. And I just think, again, I really honor you guys because I know that, I just think that's really important to know when culture's strong. Sometimes we can go after a whole bunch of things, but the culture's not there to support it. And then we wonder why things don't take place. And I just thought that was really important to park on, so thank you for that. Others, what do you guys?
In Manila, the battle cry was, don't just attend, advance. So as part of our culture, it's advance. So everybody was thinking of, despite, the mission doesn't change just because the situation changes, So we continue to move forward, and I love the fact that we have that in our culture to advance. So when COVID hit us, we were just thinking of, okay, how do we move forward with the church despite everything that's happening around us? And I think I agree that the secret weapon of Equippers Manila, and I guess all of the Equippers churches, are the leaders and volunteers who continued to serve despite the difficulty of the circumstances. Because in Manila, movement was very limited and it was risky to go out. And yet these leaders came out for taping sessions. These leaders came out and did whatever was necessary. And I think we owe that all to an amazing culture here in church.
I think for us, so much happened in that 2 years and so much got laid down to then, okay, what do we now pick up? And there's a lot that we haven't picked up either and haven't begun to do, but there's a lot of things that have shifted in our young adults area right across our nation, and the young adults have come back with a passion and a desire and a strength that I am just astounded with and so excited, because I think going into COVID, we didn't see that in our young adults across our nation in the same way. We saw them, some passionate, but even in our own local church, and I'm just speaking from one church, and I can name so many others, that they've seen a rise in their young adults where they're like, we've got a mission to do, we've got to go forward. And it's like releasing them into what they see, because they see things so differently to what we see, and they are seeing what's happening in the now. And by us releasing them, they're using initiatives that I didn't even comprehend could happen. And so I believe that we are seeing a surgence of new, but it's a new coming from a fresh wind of what's happening. And so we're seeing a fresh wind. That's, the numbers, God taught me something really strongly. Because coming back and you sit in your church service and you see there's 100 people less, it affects you. But I looked down and it was like God said, don't you dare look at what is sitting in the seats. You look at what I see in this, what you see in the spiritual realm, because what's about to come is extraordinary, and there's a move that's about to hit our nation, your nation, in an incredible way. But I believe that there is something that's happened in our young adults that's going to just explode.
I would like to say something also for all the pastors that are here. Probably for us, but I guess for everybody, these were the most difficult years to pastor a church or lead anything. And obviously, we usually tell the good stories when we are on the stage, but there has been moment, very difficult moment for all of us. What really helped us in this season was to learn to lead even without the momentum, to learn to lead even without the excitement, to learn to lead even without the finances. And it is there that you see that church was not your initiative or your leader initiative, but it was really a God thing. All hell broke out against the church, but couldn't prevail.
Right, come on.
Because it was established by Jesus. And we have seen in our nations, unfortunately, many churches shut down, many pastors even died, because of this. But I also know now that all the churches and the leaders that survived are more dependent on God than ever, are more keen to cooperate, and we all want the kingdom really to break, through the darkness in our nation, because it's like in this season, all the evil stuff was flourishing in so many ways because people were discouraged, disappointed, searching for answer, and they are searching everywhere. They are searching in all spiritual stuff and even negative things spiritual that are out there. But we as a church, we have an opportunity like never before to lift our voice. And we decided as a team to take risk. And for example, when we jump into this church planting under COVID, I'll take just 1 minute, okay? When we just jumped into this church planting under COVID, I went there in Sicily, and it was a red zone, and actually people couldn't really move from their surrounding area. We didn't know if it would have worked, but I felt in my heart, do something. Don't let the circumstances or the fear and restriction dictate your ministry, but you move by faith. And as we went there and we began to do the things of God, people began to get saved and come. And we looked for a building in Sicily. And this story nobody knows. And when we found this building, it was all broken down. And the owner is a blind man. And this blind man, when he heard that we wanted to do a church to help people in the area, he stood up, he began to walk in the room, and he is blind. And he said, I think you here can put the band. I think here you can have, and he began to describe the church. And I thought, this blind sees more than we see. And not only that, he said, if you take the building for the church, I'm going to do all the renovation with my own money. And he invested 30,000 euro to renovate on his own pocket. So we planted a church with no money, with, not really claps and enthusiasm. We just did it by faith. But that's when you know that God has called you.
How's that? You kept that very quiet. I love that. It's good. I've asked these guys to answer this question because I think it's still a good question. What's the role of the church? So I want to talk wider. There's obviously been COVID. We've got the Ukraine stuff happening, which I know you guys in Europe are much more closely connected to. Rampant inflation in most places of the world, cost of living. A lot of people struggling with a lot of things. A lot of people don't know their capital cities, which Simon and I, much to our dismay as well. So there's lots going on. But what's the role of the church? What should be the role of the church be in this situation? Like, what's our voice as church and as leaders within the church? What should we be saying to our, not just to our congregation, but I really believe to our community, because we're in the heart of our communities, we know our people. You know, what's the role of the church in this whole thing?
Love God, love people. And I just feel like, I know it sounds so simple, but I think the role of the church is to stop worrying about what people are saying about the church, stop worrying about the no-gooders that think we're not good enough, or we're not being politically correct, or we're not doing this, or we're not doing that, or looking at the other people who are in the church that are saying, you know, you're not loving on us enough, you're not doing this, but to come back to the simplicity, and I think the heart of God, and the heart of God is love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and love others as yourself. And when we can put our whole lives towards Jesus and say it's but you, Jesus, and love others, I believe that we're going to see an extraordinary influx of what God wants to do. So our role, just love others, love people, just love people. Too simple, but there you go.
I really think right now, I'll speak from the UK context, people desperately need hope. Perhaps like in a way that I've never felt it over the last 20 years. People are just desperate. They are absolutely desperate. And COVID was exhausting for people. I mean, it was tiring for us, and we've got God. For people who didn't have God, I think it was just an exhausting period of time. They've come out of that, and now they've come into, in our nation, financial crisis, mortgage rates going through the roof, cost of living going through the roof, and it's real. It's real. It's real figures. It's real. How am I going to pay my bills? And I just happened to be driving home late one night, and I put on the radio, and I heard a lady, it was like talkback radio. And so this lady was an older lady. She'd been given a terminal diagnosis. And so I don't know what that was. And she was just talking to the guy on the other end of the phone. And she was just saying, here's what she said. She said, I don't need your sympathy. She said, I need someone to tell me what to do. She said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I feel like taking the pills in front of me and finishing it now because I don't know what to do. And it really caught my heart. And I thought, wow, that there is a tone right now of hopelessness. And I really believe, for me, our church, I feel like, I've heard Pastor Bruce say it many times, but you can walk into a church and you can smell whether there's hope or not. And I think if people walk in our churches and they smell hope, man, I think they're coming. Because they're not getting it from the media, and they're not getting it from the government, and they're not getting it from their local communities. But if they can get it from us, so for me, I'm just saying, we got to pump hope. Give them hope. Give them hope. Give them hope. And not to preach, but I love what Romans says. It says we're to abandon hope. So it's not enough for us as Christians to have hope. We've got to have so much hope that when people come into contact with us, something rises in their own lives. And, just this way of testimony. I know we're coming out of COVID. We're a little bit ahead through some of where other nations are. But last 2 Sundays, we've had 75 first-time visitors. They're just coming. They're responding to people's invitations because I tell you, they are desperate for hope. And so for me, that's big focus, man. We've got to be filled with hope to overflow.
I'm just going to add on to Mark there. At the height of COVID in the Philippines, the government was hopeless. Scientists were hopeless. Every other organization was hopeless except the church. So I believe that the role of the church right now is to be the leader in globally in bringing people together and working towards a better future. There is no other organization that I would always remember my brother-in-law saying that the church is not an organization, it is an organism, It's something that's alive. And that's what people are looking for right now. I think they're looking for hope. And so, therefore, I believe that's the role of the church. We are, and in the Bible, it does say we are to lead. And I think we are to lead this world right now because what the world needs more, just like Mark said, is someone to lean on, someone to cry on, someone to just pray for them. And this brings more healing, I believe, than most organizations can provide.
when the pandemic comes up, and I thought to myself, what can I read? Is there a book about pandemics and how to react as a church or as a pastor? You know, and I didn't find any. You know, there was no blogs, no podcasts, nothing at this time, and I was like, what to read? And you know, when you open the newspaper every day, there was a new opinion about the pandemic and about the situation. It's the same with the Ukraine war. It's every day some new status, what is happening there, and there are opinions all over the place, and people thinking this way is the right or that way is the right, and is what you said, what should I do? And there's a verse in the Bible, I think in Amos 3, and there will coming a hunger for the word. Yeah. I really feel now there is a hunger in the people, in the world, for a word, for a word of truth, and we have this word. Yeah. This word which is eternal, which is from God, which is the truth, which is good hope, which is amazing, it's still living, which has power. And I think we sometimes underestimate how powerful this word is. And when we start to preach it and we start to proclaim it and just give a testimony to the people, I think this is so much worth, because there's an uprising hunger and thirst for the word. This is what we believe, and as what we can bring as a church is exactly this. We can deliver a fresh word, which is eternal and is still truth. And I think it's much more powerful than all these opinions and all this news we can read or hear from everywhere. That's it.
It's good. We're laughing because Tora is a voracious reader. So if there's something to be read about a topic, when I say he's read every book on a topic, like he's read every book on a topic. And so, yeah, that's what he means by that. Kind of coming in now, to, I guess, to you guys as leaders, I guess, personally, and I guess coming off the back even of Pastor Hannah's message, how are you guys ensuring that, you know, the one thing people want, you know, I love how we kind of talk about this theme of faith, hope, and love, you know, like people need that, eh? But how they still look to leaders to say, hey, as you said, Mark, like, what do we do? Like, where do we go? And a good leader is a good shepherd, right? A shepherd's kind of opening gates and saying, hey, sheep, come in here. There's green pasture, there's life, there's hope, there's faith here. How do you ensure that you're keeping yourself in a place where you're doing that? Because if that stuff gets hard, if us as leaders gets hard and dry, we're not opening as many gates, or we're like, no, we'll just stay here for a while because actually I don't have enough energy to get to the next gate. And if we don't do that, then we camp out here, the grass all of a sudden dries up, and we know the place that we get ourselves in pretty quick. So that being said, what do we need to do as leaders, and how do we help people out here, and how do we help those streaming and online to go, what's one thing we can give them to go, this is what I've done in this season to fuel myself up for that next season? Francesco.
I think more than ever, we have to cultivate our relationship with God. Because if we try to do God's work with our strength, we will fail for sure. And so more than ever, I believe we have to go back to the basic and never really forget about what is important. What brought us there in the beginning? Because so many times we read the Bible just to prepare a sermon. Or we pray so that we can be anointed for the sermon. But that's not what brought us there in first place. What brought us there in first place was a love for God. And the Bible says that John the Baptist, the Bible says, that grew before the Lord to the point that it says he went into lonely place for the love of God. So basically it was the love of God that separated him from common life. It's not the need of the people, it's the love of God. And out of our love for God and His love for us, we can meet the need of the people, I believe.
I totally agree with that. I would say, truthfully, my devotional life is at the strongest it's ever been. Partly because there is a demand on us, but actually partly because, man, we need God and we love God. But the second thing I would say is the power of connection. continues to be an incredible resource to keep us fueled and fired. And just as a way of testimony, some of you would have seen this online, but we just did Shout Conference in Europe, which was pretty amazing. And going into Shout Conference in Europe, like probably just about every church here, we're still rebuilding teams, getting volunteers back in again, all that kind of stuff, rebuilding, getting things going again. And we could have looked at that and thought, man, how are we going to ever pull it off? But here's what I found. Through the power of connection, Pastor Sam and I talking, feeling like it was the right time. When we brought that to the people, the excitement of vision actually lifted people. And so actually post-Shout, we are stronger than we were pre-Shout. And the reason is because the vision of it energized people. And I think people are tired right now, often because they're not living with vision. But like when vision is on the table again, it energizes you to go, we can do this. And but how do you get vision? How do you get vision in a season like this? I think we need one another. We need one another. And we need significant relationships, significant connection, conversations. And, Sam and I had several conversations over the years about Shout in Europe and college in Europe and all those things. And there just came a timing that was like, we think it's now. And then when we said, okay, this is the vision, let's go for it. Man, I feel more energized. It's been physically hard work, but I feel more energized as a leader than I've been in a long time. And I think our people are more energized than they've been because they've got vision. And so I think vision is a big part of staying energized. I think connection has definitely helped me over the last 2.5 years for sure.
No worries, man. You're welcome. It's good. You're welcome.
Thanks, Jake.
So what I did was I tried something new. That's basically what I did during the pandemic. Religiosity is doing the same thing over and over again, and sometimes I feel that the pandemic, one of the things you can learn from that is that maybe we can get into a situation where we're doing Sundays and doing our thing, and then something disrupts us, and that causes us to reflect on, hey, maybe I'm not trying something new and not doing anything new. The hardest thing I've had to learn while in the pandemic was to preach to a camera. So I have no idea how many pastors struggled with that, but I was one of them. Because there was no interaction, no one saying amen, no one raising their hand, there was no one really reacting. So we're so used to coming on a Sunday and hearing these people respond to our messages. And now you're preaching to a machine, you're preaching to a camera. So there came a point where I kind of made, because I wasn't used to it, I kind of made my notes a little bit too long, like 7 or 8 pages. And I was literally reading it off like a prompter. Yeah, so, and John told me, he said, hey, that's kind of flat, man. What happened? So, yeah, that's true, I listened to myself and I cringe because, man, what happened? Then one day I was making a message, and then the Holy Spirit just said, hey, make room for me. Make room for me. So when I get to the 3rd page now, during the pandemic, I stopped. Doesn't matter if I had anything more to say. It doesn't matter if I had anything more to contribute to this message. I just said, Lord, I'm going to stop and I'm going to let you speak during this time. And I think that during that time, that was the greatest thing that I did. I said, Lord, I need to learn something new. I don't care if it's a camera. You can use that moment in order to change someone's life in someone's home. So that's what I did. I learned something new.
As you said this, it remembers me in these times. In the beginning of the pandemic, we were really busy, more busy than ever before. I mean, the 4, 8, 12 weeks, something around. But then there came a time of, no traveling, nothing, not really a lot of meetings while the week. So there was a chance to reset some stuff for me. I remember, I want to learn something. So I set up some targets. I said, I've now 40 days of learning something new and building a new discipline into my life. For example, what I never did and what I learned now in the pandemic was journaling. So writing down some thoughts every day and reflecting helps me very much in certain ways and so on. So that was really a chance for me in a certain way to take this time and learning some stuff I never learned in the times before because they were so busy and having the chance to, implement something new, which could be really, really important to stay fresh. And journaling for me, for example, is really a key to, stay by myself and know what I'm thinking and reflecting on it and so on. Yeah.
I think for me, the chance to go deeper with God was the most greatest gift that was ever given. I remember saying it towards the end of 2019, I don't know if I can do another year like I've just done, God. I don't know if I can be as busy as I've been. I don't know if I can keep doing the pressure that I'm feeling, even though I believe I'm serving you, right? And I noticed in my life that, I still did my devotions, I still prayed, but I didn't feel like it was giving the depth to what God wanted. And so when the pandemic hit and we were closed down and our state was closed down for 4 months, couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't go beyond our 5 kilometres. We couldn't see our family. We could go out for 1 hour a day to walk. I mean, there were so many restrictions placed around us. And in that, I'm a people person, and I found myself going inward. But then I realised, Ruth, you need to go into this place with Jesus. This is an opportunity. And I did, and I spent so much time just being in the Word and replenishing myself that when we've come out of the pandemic, it's almost like I've gone, oh God, I don't want to lose that. I can't lose that. I can't go back to where I was. Not that I'm talking about can't go back to ministering, but I can't lose what I had in the pandemic, the greatest gift that we could have, and that hunger and the desire to go deeper. And so for me, it's a decision every day. I need to continue. Doesn't matter how busy I get. It doesn't matter what happens. My most important relationship is my Jesus. And without Jesus, I'm nothing. And so if I can encourage any of you out there, don't give up Jesus. Don't give up your Jesus time. Don't give up being in his presence. Don't give up allowing him to continue to wash over you, breathe on you, and do something fresh in you. And if you feel like it's starting to, stop and go back and say, I want that time again, God. But we have to make the time.
I was listening to Ace. I did an online message, and I think it was one of my first ones, and I didn't realize if you're preaching to a camera, it goes a lot faster than you think it does. And I had to do it, and it was the one that was going to go on, on Remo on TV as well. And I was a little bit, okay, I can do this, and talking to a camera. And then I realized I'm about 15 minutes in, and I've pretty much got nothing left. I just read my stuff there, and I'm like, and my mind's screaming at me, and I'm thinking like, man, what am I going to say? And I'm like, Holy Spirit, you got to talk. And then I don't know what I said for the rest of the 15 minutes. I still can't remember what I said. And it was so funny after that. And I remember I get a great message from Pastor Helen. Jake, that message was so amazing. Thank you so much. And I'm like, man, fake it till you make it, people. Like, you don't know how much I needed that text, Helen, that day. But anyway, what I'm saying is we've got to have fun as well. And I do want to say, I think through this season, the one thing I've always loved to do is, I say, my name's Jake and I like to party. And that's always going to be my tagline. But I think we've got to have fun. We've got to enjoy, as Mark said, I think relationships, like we get to do this stuff. This is really cool. Everybody comes away from Acts going, this was so fun that we get to come together and do this stuff. And I just think let's never be glib with these environments. Let's never realize that this stuff is really significant, what we do, and do it together. And I think even on behalf of the movement, we want to say, hey, if you need help, as Pastor Sam often says, man, stick up your hand. We're here to help. We'll do whatever we can to make sure that you guys thrive in your churches and life. And I hope that's well said. So can we give our panel an amazing hand? I'm going to hand back to Pastor Sam. Give these guys a big hand. Thank you so much. You're amazing.